One is the resilience of networks, and the other one is flexibility. So the management of smart consumption with smart meters. Sorry, we have some connection issues. But first, I'd like to take a step back because we have a digitalization, we have the inefficient demand, but in Latin America, we need to overcome some challenges from the present, from the past. And so we need to look into the future, but we also need to invest in issues that were already overcome by countries in Europe, in North America. And so I'm going to along with Olave and the University of Chile and Adelaide, which is Roberto, everyone, Catherine Segura as well, Joaquin. It's just a spoiler because we're going to present the entire study in the next future. And we're also based on the Inter-American Development Bank study. And so what we have is a reality from Latin America where losses are very, very relevant. And so that means that this is a risk on population. And so what did we do? We were raising information with 43 suppliers where we were first doing a survey with a formulaire and then with other questions. So our goal is to build a manual for good practices and also to see elements and measurements that will help us to solve issues with losses. So here, 38 questionnaires, 29 interviews, and here I'm going to share some examples of what we have built. The first work was a taxonomy, and so it was defined instruments, which were a lot, and it's what we see in different countries. So we had 3 categories: the detection, localization of losses, the incentive and control of fraud, and third, the regulation of social inclusion. And so we may think that during measurements. So that's a way of considering it. About the first group, here we have a classification from what's brought us for better treatment, and we wanted to create an analysis on advanced analytic and data. And so here we have detected data, and it's what we found in some companies such as PMUT, and we have 2 companies from the EPM group. And for that, we need as enablers advanced measurement and data. We need to have history and data and analysis systems are more advanced. So in that sense, AI, for example, really supports us, and we have lots of examples of use of AI so that we can detect losses. And so here, the second group is technical on the incentive of fraud control. And so in that sense, we highlight what's being promised. So here we are building a fixed rate on something fixed on that group of measurements, and enablers are how the material, anti-fraud material is available, the community communication with municipalities. That is a very important point that we're understanding in interviews. And I would like to say that I was a director from Light for a few years. So Light in Rio de Janeiro, that's also a supplier that is facing this issue in a severe way. This group of measurements regarding regulation and social inclusion. And so we have an example, which is the prepayment service. And then we're going to see how this is in Brazil, it's been tested in Brazil, which is all about the rates. Yes. And we have as implementers of these measurements, we have the enablers, which are the measurements which are necessary, and the network and the regulations for prepayment. And so restrictions are the absence of the channels of forced local recharge, bypass, which is an issue with losses, and intermittence of communication. And so that is an example, a preview. And later we're going to present the study, not launch it. And so if you'd like a more complete presentation, you can let us know. Okay, now we are going to start with the questions, and I will ask questions in Spanish and Portuguese, but please feel free to respond in Spanish, English, Portuguese, not Japanese, Chinese, none of that, okay? Okay, very well. So I'm going to text it.
Portunhol, sí, es un idioma muy hablado.
Yes, Portuñol is a Felix Sosa, who's chairman of ANDI in Paraguay. Felix, Paraguay has an important surplus of energy, of electrical power currently. How we can make most of this advantage to implement energy efficiency programs regarding the demand, so it can strengthen competitiveness and the economic development of the country? Thank you very much, Alessandra. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you very much for inviting me. Truthfully, regarding the intelligent or smart consumption is something very important, because we're looking for a flexible tariff with this purpose, so they can respond to the costs of generation, transmission, distribution of electrical supply, and especially all the things that can incentivize smart use. In our particular case, to be able to optimize the infrastructure that exists already, because Paraguay is a country that has Paraguayans believe that they have to use power any way as possible, not efficiently or thinking about energy efficiency. So that changes a little bit now, because Paraguay, from 1968, the generation of electrical energy is much over the demand, much more than demand. In 68, when the first hydroelectrical plant started generating, it was 10 times more than the demand back then. Then we had a large hydroelectrical, binational hydroelectrical plants together with Brazil, with Argentina, Yacyretá. So there was an abundance of generation of energy or power. It's very difficult to implement the efficient use of power in Paraguay due to the culture of the people. So our load factor is pretty low in this sense, load factor. But currently, with the arrival of huge demand due to AI as well, or due to data centers, mainly due to the virtual asset, that are arriving a lot in Paraguay due to energy, enough energy, we started implementing a larger scale due to this demand, the efficient tariff, let's say. On the implementation of a smart tariff, I just wanted to mention a case, a specific case, the digital assets which currently have a demand of 18%, the whole demand of implementing this. Nevertheless, a very interesting tariff. On one hand, there are certain dates where you're allowed to log out or disconnect. So we have defined that in the contract itself, we can disconnect, therefore, up to 90% of the demand. Just we're using a request 10 minutes before disconnecting, and if necessary, if the demand is growing too much. And if there is a need of the system as well, it has to disconnect up to 90 minutes depending on the demand. There's an operational center which automatically the whole system can be disconnected. So this connection can actually create up to 350 hours on a yearly basis. This allowed us to manage this demand level, which I repeat, 18% of the interconnected national system at the moment. So it allows us to optimize our electrical infrastructure. We are also working for managing the demand from customers or clients, especially from residential homes. And within this context, we have implemented a tariff. It's a daily tariff that has peak load hours, then has an hour of less demand during the day. It has a ratio of 2. Clients can choose for their rates or the tariffs, the effects of having a reduction in their monthly bill from 5 to up to 15%, a reduction on their bill. So these are decisions that are implemented, and obviously we have a huge demand. That is another issue which demands us to implement different, more concrete actions to be able to optimize the electrical infrastructure. And the case of Paraguay is working pretty well, I must say. Thank you very much, Felix. Very good examples, thank you, of the use of the digital assets to increase the energy economic efficiency of these assets. Very well, so now I'll give the floor to Juíza. Juíza in Brazil is discussing very well a lot of tariffs and regulatory frameworks to create flexibility in the consumption. What role does the prices and dynamic tariffs to encourage a smarter system of payment? Yes, very sorry to speak I'm going to speak in English, not Portuguese. I hope you can understand me.
Felix just presented a very interesting case, so a very interesting experience coming from Paraguay. In Brazil, we have circa 88 million users connected to the system. Smart meters have been deployed for less than 2 million. So I am a former regulator. I was a regulator from 2005 to 2010. When I left the regulator, I engaged in the design of a plan to roll out smart meters in Brazil the year of 2015, and we still have not advanced enough. Smart meters are critical enablers for us to provide consumers with the signals for them to respond, signals for producers to operate, and also to design the system well. The government now has launched a public consultation that will accept contributions till next week. The goal is to discuss future prospects for implementation of smart meters. The goal is to have each distribution company delivering smart meters to 40% of its market in 10 years, 4% each year. So what is asked from the distribution companies? Each one of these companies is supposed to work on a plan and discuss with the government a plan for this implementation in their concession areas. Firstly, what is important for this to succeed? We have to understand, is 40% enough? Is this a good scale to make the plants profitable? Is this a good scale for the consumers to benefit? Consumers must be able to respond. They must be able to see the signals and also to react for the system to achieve efficiency gains. This is the first one. Operators must have credible plans and also an understanding of how they are going to get the returns from operation companies. And for this, there is a critical role for the government to work on the design, to assess the design, assess implementation of these smart meters, yes, and also communicate with the population, communicate with the users on the benefits. Otherwise, we have several experiences worldwide in which implementation and grid modernization were not well accepted by users. This is critical. So there is a critical role for all the stakeholders to make these implementations effective and also to improve efficiency and also to be beneficial for consumers at a larger scale. So this is, I think, the only way for us to present the signals that consumers need to play an active role in a decentralized system architecture we have transitioned to, because our systems have changed. This is the reality, for instance, in Brazil. Wind and solar has increased their penetration, achieving now 40%, or not 40%, but a significant, so it's 43 gigawatts of distributed generation in a system of 230 gigawatts of installed capacity. This is too much, but for this system to work in this new decentralized architecture, consumers must be able to respond, and they will only respond effectively if they have the information they need to properly manage their consumption patterns.
Muchas gracias, Ruiz.
Thank you very much. Yes, Brazil has a huge challenge now, especially because the starting point now is very low for the implementation. The implementation of smart meters is much less than other countries of the region. So,
But with a few exceptions, the region has not advanced much in the implementation of these meters.
okay, well, thank you very much, Joisa. And now I'll give the floor to Juan Meriches, who is Executive Director of ARIV Electricity. Chile has been pioneers in integrating renewable energies on a greater scale. From the perspective of distributors, the question is, what are the main challenges and opportunities so the management of the demand can turn into a real, actual tool of resilience of the electrical system? Thank you, Alessandra. Well, as you said, effectively speaking, Chile has been a pioneering country in developing, in a mass sense, the renewable energies at a generation level. I could dare to say that it's been a very successful experience. In the process of decarbonization, Chile has had the purpose of being able to carbon neutral by 2050, where decarbonizing the generation grid, the electrical grid, is one of the main elements of this strategy. Nevertheless, we do know that the process of decarbonization is not just ends there, and that it's very important that this happens at a level of the demand of the end user. And we don't have a paradox like today, but we have fantastic solar and wind farms, but people still heat their homes with kerosene or firewood and using diesel vehicles. So naturally, currently the consumption of electricity within the electrical grid of Chile is only 20%. And from that 20%, the residential consumption is only 22%. So there is an enormous space there regarding what electrification of the demand means at end user level, especially residentials, to whom we work at a distribution level normally, completely and absolutely no large modifications that were thought for other moments. What we sought was to increase the coverage of the network in an efficient fashion, but did not have as a purpose nor the quality of service, nor the resilience to climate change, even less thinking about what is required from the network in terms of flexibility for energy transition. So here in Chile, there is no smart meters. There are no daily tariffs. We have a network where the investments which are carried out are as minimum to have a relatively flat and efficient tariff. But we suffer this because we require more capacity to supply, for example, data centers. And there are certain restrictions currently which do not allow these projects. It delays the projects 2 or 3 years more than necessary to have the needs according to the consumption of their projects. So it's aligned with the consumption of their projects. So we truly have a very large gap there, especially thinking about efficient consumption. Currently, the possibilities of a user in any household in Chile to carry out demand management under this scenario is minimum. So to use efficient equipment maybe, or machines, to change the culture mindset maybe, but they don't have the tools necessary around the world maybe sometimes to manage things better. So we do understand that there is something to be resolved. Now, regarding the resilience of the networks, we have huge gaps too. This has been proven by experience. Last year, in fact, we had an extreme climate event in the city of Santiago, yes, which meant that there were families even that were 2 weeks with no power. So I know that this is not exclusively that happens here. We've seen other experiences in Brazil, Central America, very similar experiences. But as long as this is not a component that collects the regulation necessary to give the right signals to make more robust the network, it's going to continue being an issue. And currently, it's a legitimacy issue of the sector as a whole, because the perception that citizenship has at the end of the day is that they have a power. In the case of Chile, it's not just expensive, it's increased more than 70% during this last year. Even, you can't guarantee continuity. So this generates an issue of social legitimacy regarding how society faces a sector like the energy sector. So technology has advanced, but the regulation must catch up.
Isso é algo importante de ter par e passo entre
have a bypass into both.
Muchas gracias,
Juan Carlos Onedo is chairman of the board and electrical coordinator of the National Electrical Coordinator of Chile. Juan, from the operator of the system point of view, what technological and regulatory conditions are essential so the management of demand can turn into a reliable resource that contributes safety and sustainability to the electrical system? Well, the first thing is that we have to understand how the nature of the demand has changed. years ago, we thought that demand was static, simple, pretty fixed or stable, but the technological evolution has shown that the demand is much more complex. We are seeing now that end users are making most of the regulation and the metering, and we have solar roofs as well. So we're not talking about only consumers, but the concept of prosumers. They're producers and users, so pro-users. We're progressing on electromobility. Chile has the largest bus fleet outside China in the world. And forgive me if I'm wrong, but currently the fleet of buses in Santiago represent close to 300 megawatts. That is around. These are mobile batteries. There's nearly 1 million private cars, but we have 2,000 electrical vehicles in Chile. B2Ls that can inject the supply to at homes. And if we have 10,000 electrical vehicles, we would have a storage of 500 megawatt hour. But it's technifying itself. It's progressing very quickly, and it's going to we have storage, so basically it has to adapt itself to because we have all this capacity, storage and distribution and data center. It has a capacity of generation. All data centers have a sort of backup generation system, whether it be gas or diesel. So therefore, it's a demand which could be pretty flexible. Geographically, from one country to another, or from one continent to another. So here we're in energy amongst countries. So understanding the nature of this demand, we know that there's potential that can be used. And this requires also to digitalize the system. These are small resources we need to generate at a larger scale, which means that we need communication, networks and networks of communication. We have 5G networks, we're talking about 6G soon, but we have to progress on measurements, massify the smart meters on these new devices. Regulatorily speaking now, first of all, we have to recognize the demand, acknowledge it as explicitly as a resource of the network. Currently we have very well renowned that we recognize what is transmission, generation, technical standards for both cases, but we have to think on developing technical standards for the demand also, and acknowledge these within the regulation explicitly. The regulations which encourage the participation of these consumers or producers, prosumers, have to feel that they're part of this energy transition process and that they receive the benefits of this because they can contribute. I mentioned everything already available. So have technological interoperability. So it's the mobility of different agents is a complication. Yesterday we saw that the communities, energy communities, the possibility the regulation allows to carry out peer-to-peer transactions, but we have to generate regulatory frameworks to concentrate this with the traders, and so these regulatory frameworks are adaptive and flexible, so they can agree to the speed at which zero carbon system. Thank you. Now this relation or synergy amongst the telecom business and electrical energy companies or industry is very relevant there. So another point is that consumer, which is more this prosumer, also gives the opportunity for this flexibility of the demand because it's or the system. Because it's going to be an opportunity for us, right? Very well. So we're reaching the end now. I'm just going to ask all the same questions. After listening to your experiences and visions, what are the concrete steps that should be make the transition towards electrical a flexible consumption system which is flexible and accessible to all the citizenship or society. Well, this is a very intelligent question, very smart. We have huge challenges in this aspect, of course. I believe that we all agree that at the end of the day, technology and the inclusion of technology within the system of management is fundamental here. That clients are relevant players in this process. And we do need as well the implementation of a smart meter. I'd like to also say that we have as a target, we have installed some smart meters, but now we are in a project of installing 20% of the smart meters that represent 80% approximately of the electrical energy demand of the country. So this is a project which we're carrying out because we do believe that it's the way, truly the way, how we can manage demand, and that clients and customers are participants in this transition process to be able to complement each other or amongst ourselves in different aspects. First, in the generation side, considering that intermittent generation is entering the system very much so. That's not the case of Paraguay yet, because just now it's going to enter this process. They weren't really necessarily because it has huge hydroelectrical plants. So for me, energy integration is fundamental. And therefore we can optimize all the facilities, electrical facilities that exist, from generation, distribution, and transmission. And I repeat, for me, our strategic ally on this for the management of demand is the technological inclusion, and also that people understand that it's part of the energy transition process. And for this purpose, we do need proper education and communication to all the society. Thank you, Felix. Juiza.
Very fortunate that one mentioned that we must perceive, so we must have data centers playing the role of flexible resources. It's not only about attracting investments, it's about having these resources playing an active role in this decentralized architecture. How are we going to do that? So we must adapt, we must design regulation properly at speed and scale. How are we going to do that? Brazil is already experimenting. Yes, is deploying regulatory sandbox, trying to understand beyond the technology, how can we have best outcomes, best results, best efficiency, higher efficiency gains from these implementations? How are we going to design time of use rates? Are we going to implement critical peak pricing? Can we have real-time pricing? Prepayment is enough? When is prepayment enough? So is 20%, 40% of smart meters implementation the right number? Is 20 or 40 the right number for every place, for every concession area, for every state, for every country? How are we going to design this? There is one opportunity, shared knowledge on implementation of these pilot and demonstration projects. This is something that we could have in Brazil, but this is something that we could have at the regional scale as well. So through this collaboration, regulation could adapt faster enough so that this transition is beneficial, not only in the narrative.
Perfect, Juiza. Thank you very much. Juan Meriches.
Thank you very much, Mr. Juan Meriches. Well, I'd like to focus on the need of major investments here. When you see the analysis of National Agency of Energy regarding energy transition, they focus very much on the need to strengthen networks. By 2030, we have to double the investment of networks. 80% will be in the networks of distribution at a worldwide level. The ADLAC study on needs of investment mentioned that in the region, they'll require by 2040 more than $430 billion. In Chile, $15 billion. That's triple of what is invested during a similar period of time in Chile. That level of magnitude, that's what we're talking about. And as this is not a conscious part of the needs that the country has, thinking about the end users, I think that it's a concept which I'd like to mention. We must not forget why this discussion that we're having now regarding the energy future is a development that has to be thought of. The benefits, we have to think about the benefits for the consumer regarding what we're planning. That's what we're planning, that's what we're trying to do. So these will be necessary investments to improve the quality of life through electrical service that's continuous and for the consumers and prosumers. We have to be, the authorities have to be convinced also. That's what we need to do. Now that is the right path to take. And as a society, we have to be able to convey to the users, as you said, tell them, communicate the benefits. If not, it's an issue of social legitimacy. Well, we're going to have a gap, but it's very difficult. Oh, thank you very much, Mariches.
Juan Olmedo, por favor.
Well, we have to understand what's coming. It's a big transformation. And in this process, what's happening is that we're going to democratize the electric system. In Chile, we have over 800 stakeholders in the electric market, and as we start enabling an active consumer, we're going to have 1 million consumers. So the idea is to have a global view of the process, and as part of what I can say in Chile's experience, it's important to have adaptive frameworks. So this is quickly evolving, and so far regulation frameworks have not gone at the speed of technological changes. So technological interoperability, using standard protocols for the entire digitalization process in the grid, and something critical, which is increasing citizen participation. So we need to educate people in energy matters, because so far we have talked about investments in transmission, generation, distribution, but what happens behind the consumption? We need to work internally. We need to make sure people understand what the use of electricity is. That's very different from GLP, kerosene, wood. So we need to educate people. And there's experiences in North America on flexible demand with heaters for sanitary water, where the user gets a heater at a preferential price in exchange for a grid manager decides when to warm up water. So, and this is something that in Chile for quite some time, we've had the full electric departments, they don't have gas installations. So, and while there's no explicit regulation, the regulations for gas, they were making construction costs more expensive. So, due to other signals, this started being produced, but we need to approach it that way. Thank you, Juan. Yes. Thank you. We may conclude that there's a lot of opportunity, but also many challenges.
afinal, todo que
and lots of
existe,
work as well.
que
And
normalmente
in the end,
será
everything has a final goal, and it's the end user.
Muitas graças a
Well,
todos.
thank you
Vou dar,
everyone.
então, esses contatos sobre esse
And
tema,
now
que é sobre
we'll continue
relevante
working
dia a
on
dia.
it, and it's a very relevant matter. Thank you.
Forget the love our feeling when I follow the sun. If you ever want my love again, you're coming home and then I will give you all the love.
Mientras... Hola, hola, ahora sí. Bueno, mientras nuestros panelistas...
While our panelists are taking the picture at the end of the panel, let me tell you that we'll have a break now and we'll meet back at 11:30. Thank you.
Once I